So why we decided to create a wool mill vision is because currently California is the largest producer of wool in the country, and that is currently 3.1 million pounds of wool that is produced annually, and less than 0.3% of that wool is actually being processed. And so when I was starting the 1-year wardrobe challenge and people were asking me, oh, I want to wear local fiber and I want to dress from my bioregion, my answer to them often was, you'll have to make it yourself, which is a great thing. You'll have to work with, a smaller mill and get yarn and create your own sweater through knitting processes or perhaps weaving. And a lot of that local fiber, unless you're very skilled, it's hard to get it onto human skin. And so our query was, how can we take the 3 million plus pounds of wool that is right now going into a commodity market and being sent overseas, or is being landfilled, composted, how can we turn that material into something that you could wear that's accessible to you and accessible to those who don't have the skills to make their own garments? So we also did this because right now California is only processing wool at the yarn scale, and the mills that are on the ground now are vital to producing this yarn. We are so grateful for Valley Ford Wool Mill, Aunt Janet's Mill, Oakhurst, YOLO, the emergence of the Mendocino Wool Works. All of these facilities are key to adding value to our wool resources. But at the end of the day, they're only adding value to 0.3% of the wool in the state. And even if those mills doubled in their production, we would still be value adding to less than 1%. And you're left with a yarn that's extremely beautiful, but it's perfect for your knitting needles, maybe your knitting machine, and maybe your loom. But there's no one producing cloth, which again makes it a little challenging to dress yourself. Ranchers and farmers that are currently producing wool that's going into the commodity market are getting a certain price for their wool that we would say isn't covering the costs of that wool production. There's people getting 80 cents a pound, $2.80 a pound tops, and for that price, most people are barely able to afford shearing their sheep. Many of them aren't able to afford extra feed costs. Wool, because of these price points, is considered a byproduct, or it's sold to the commodity market just as a way to cover some basic expenses. But wool on its own is generally not valued by the rancher or the farmer, and our desire with this wool mill was to set a price in California for wool that was stable, and that prices were set in such a way where people could count on the money being received quickly, not just at an auction, at a commodity auction where you send your wool away and you don't exactly know when it's going to be sold. We knew that the wool mill could purchase the wool instantly, get money into the hands of ranchers and farmers quickly, and we knew that we could set prices 3 and 4 times what they currently are. And we could still run a functioning facility and create cloth that was still within the ballpark of what people could potentially pay. So what we designed in this wool mill vision is soup to nuts, raw wool coming off the rancher farm, going into a facility that washes that wool, and all of the biosolids collected from that wool washing or scouring process are collected and composted with green waste, which could be rice straw or landscaping yard waste or agricultural waste, and turned into compost. So the wool then would go through the process of being cleaned after the biosolids were removed, and then be drafted and combed and pin drafted to the point where it became wool top. And then it would go through to machines that would spin it, creating worsted fine gauge yarns. So fine that they could produce fabrics that you could wear next to your skin. And I'm wearing a sweater right now that's from one of our beloved, this is from the YOLO wool mill yarn. And you can see the gauge. It's a beautiful single thick yarn. But after wool had gone through our pin drafters and our particular set of spinning devices, wonder if I can show this, we'd be able to produce wool garments that were basically wool jersey. I don't know if you can see this. This is 100% wool. This is a tank top. This is a t-shirt. It says also 100% wool. Everything I'm wearing right now is 100% wool, including my pants. But it's just a matter of how you process the wool to get it into this form. And so we were excited about the idea of making a very nice wool jersey. So after the yarns are spun into these fine gauges, the yarns would be sent to knitting machines, and circular knitting machines would create basically cloth that could then be turned to cut and sew manufacturers and turned into performance wear clothing. This facility, I started with the environmental impact when I discussed the compost, but to go further, we developed a system that would recycle 100% of the water, and this is very important in a facility that uses 70,000 gallons of water per week. So 100% of the water would be recycled through a living machine, which uses biological systems to clean the water. So the wool washing system can be incredibly depleting to the environment. You can drain aquifers, you can often displace, you have to import water often. We see this in many wool washing facilities, and they often leave a lot of the waste or debris in the water. We designed a system that would compost biosolids, recycle all of the water back into the system. We also designed this entire wool mill basically off of solar thermal, geothermal, and solar panels. This would allow for the machinery to be run off renewable energy. So just to note, if this compost were applied onto California rangelands where sheep are grazing, we know that those rangelands would become a carbon sink based on peer-reviewed research from the Marin Carbon Project that was done by the Silver Lab at UC Berkeley. Because we were looking at ameliorating the big challenges in the textile industry, such as exploited labor, huge amounts of endocrine disrupting agents flowing into freshwater resources, air pollution, etc., we took on the wool mill vision with the support of specific individuals and foundations, and we organized a team of people that came together to look at how we could really transform the textile industry in California and offer local fiber to local people. So while we know that it's possible to create this facility, the wool supply will allow us to create fine cloth. We also know that the finished prices for this, there's not currently enough of the fertile economic conditions for people to value that. We need to educate the population. We need to talk to them about the truth and the real cost of their clothing. And we need to continue to move the populace towards the demand that's required to prove that this mill could exist. But until we can show that you, the general population, is ready to pay more for their clothing, we are not prepared yet to put this mill on the ground tomorrow. We are now developing a stepping stone policy where we're going to look at taking apart the wool mill vision into separate aspects and seeing what we can start to put on the ground as soon as possible. So if you would like to read more about the wool mill vision, we have this now downloadable on our website at www.fibershed.com, and there's links to both the study and different appendices, including the life cycle assessment for carbon beneficial wool and carbon beneficial cloth. So thanks for spending the time to listen, and good day.